Outdated Etsy tips might seem like a good idea, but not if you want to be successful. My Etsy shop has had over 43,000 items sold, 11,000 five-star reviews, and over $1 million in revenue. And Etsy has changed a lot since I started my Etsy shop, but I still see some of the same old advice being given to Etsy sellers. In this video, I'm going to reveal 8 completely outdated pieces of Etsy seller advice, and I'm going to go through all of the reasons why these tips don't work so you don't make the same mistake as millions of other Etsy sellers. So I think we're going to call all of these tips and tricks fake news for Etsy. The first tip I see being given to new Etsy sellers is to copy other Etsy shops. And the reason why people might think this works is because they probably took something that somebody else made and they improved upon it. But if you outright copy what someone else is doing and copy their title, copy their tags, now, sure, if you see other people selling blankets on Etsy, you can sell blankets on Etsy. If you only copy what other Etsy sellers are doing and don't improve upon it in some way or change it, make it better, make it new, refresh it, change it for the season, there's no way your Etsy shop will be successful for the long term. All you're doing is simply trying to compete with an existing listing. If you see another Etsy shop with a listing that seems to be successful, you don't necessarily know the reasons why that listing is successful. Perhaps it went viral on social media. And just yesterday, the seller might have offered an enormous discount on that listing that was purchased in bulk. You just never know. So the cure for this outdated Etsy trick is simply to take inspiration from, but you need to significantly improve upon another listing you see on Etsy. As you may or may not be aware, there are already enough shops that will steal photos, steal ideas, and steal outright. But the real path to success on Etsy is to innovate and improve upon something in some way so that your item is more desirable to customers. By the way, I would absolutely love to hear from you and hear about some of the more outlandish, outdated Etsy tips, tricks, hacks, or advice that you've tried that epically failed or maybe actually worked. Let me know below. Outdated Etsy tip number 2 is to include incorrect spellings on your listing tags. Okay, guys, so just this past week, I was listening to another Etsy YouTuber video, and they recommended including misspellings or incorrect spellings that were found in a piece of Etsy SEO search software. And just because it appears that an enormous number of people are searching for this particular keyword with very little competition, it's probably too good to be true. Etsy's algorithm is actually smarter than that. Including incorrect spellings isn't going to get you to the top of the search rankings or get you any more sales from customers. Our goal as Etsy sellers is to be seen by as many people as possible. And if it appears that there's a large number of people searching for a particular item with misspelled words, it's probably not true. It's probably not going to help your listing. The cure is to use keywords in your titles and tags that customers are actually searching for with legitimate spellings of real words. Outdated Etsy tip number 3 is to focus on Etsy trends. Now, please take my word for it. There is nothing better than having an item go viral on Etsy for a short period of time. If you are a brand new Etsy seller and you are trying to sell St. Patrick's Day items or Easter items that are extremely generic, it's going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to compete with more established Etsy shops that have regular customers, that have a social media presence, perhaps even an email list. And this will be extremely discouraging to you. If you're always focusing on the next season or the next new trend, it's going to be very difficult to get traction in your shop. And as a new Etsy seller, you will see success by having an item that is so unique, unusual, and amazing that no one else has it yet. And you can certainly add trendy items to your shop But you might want to focus on items that are going to have a much more enduring success than perhaps the Super Bowl, which will be over by the time I've even made this video. The cure to this outdated Etsy tip is to capitalize on trends when you can, except you really don't want to be stuck on the treadmill of adding trendy items every other day. Focus on adding items customers truly need, not just filling a short-term void for your customers. Now, perhaps one of the absolute worst outdated Etsy advice I still see being given out is to offer the customer an item or a discount or something in return for adding a review or a social media post. This is against Etsy's terms of service, and it can get your shop into trouble. Now, of course, it goes without saying that you can send your customers discounts towards future purchases to your shop or to ask them to share a picture on Instagram. Except you can't offer your customers a discount or a free item in return for doing so. So the cure to this outdated Etsy tip is simple. Just don't bribe your customers. Outdated Etsy tip number 5 is to be concerned about having any type of text or graphic on top of your main listing photo. It seems to be a myth at this point, but a few years ago, there was real concern that having any type of text or logo on your main listing photo would mean you would no longer be found in Etsy search because you wouldn't be found in Google search. If we search spooky Halloween shirt Etsy on Google Image, we can see here that there are plenty of shirts that have text, like little stickers or other words that are on the main listing photo. And these shirts are all still found in Google search, with some of them, such as this one, being shown very highly ranked on Google. If the text or the graphic on the photo is going to distract or annoy the customer in some way, then perhaps it's a bad idea. But this clearly isn't stopping Etsy sellers from getting sales. So the cure to this outdated Etsy advice is to do whatever you think is going to help your listing and your shop do the best. Outdated Etsy seller advice number 6 is to focus on popular niches. This would be to focus on the niches or the customer search words with enormous volume. But of course, this also means there's an enormous amount of competition, making it very difficult for your items to stand out. Instead, it's going to be much easier to show up in Etsy search for a keyword or keywords that are much more highly targeted to the specific customer. I'm talking about keywords such as gift for her, gifts for her, Christmas shirt. And while these all might be accurate keywords, there's probably a million more that are much more highly targeted to ensure your item can start to sell. And the more specific you are on Etsy, the more success you will have. So if you don't have an incredibly huge social media following or email list to drive customers to your shop, then the cure to be successful on Etsy is to be specific to be successful. If you've made it this far and have found that these suggestions resonate with you, or perhaps you just find these outdated tips hilarious, then please take a second to subscribe so you can be along for future hilarity on the channel. Outdated Etsy seller advice number 7, and this might be the most overused strategy I see Etsy sellers still using extremely unsuccessfully. And that is using repetitive keywords or repetitive SEO to the point where we're basically keyword stuffing. Now, sure, we want to be specific. I just said that. But to be successful on Etsy, we need to be creative in determining who the item is truly for and who will benefit the most from this item. If we are including the same search words over and over and over, we are missing out on many potential sales. If we are able to provide Etsy with a few specific and unique search words, that will help to catapult us to success much quicker. It's definitely not always easy, but perhaps there are holidays or similar people who might also benefit from this item. The cure to this outdated Etsy tip is to include a variety of keywords to help Etsy pinpoint the ideal customer for this item. Outdated Etsy tip number 8, and just don't try this. Just don't. It doesn't work. It doesn't. Outdated Etsy tip number 8 is to sell your items at a loss just to get an order. Certainly, we all need to experiment with different strategies that will work for us and our Etsy shop. It's certainly okay to tweak your pricing and to try different pricing strategies. However, selling something at an insane discount might be only doable if you already have an enormous amount of sales that you can withstand the loss. If a customer has an issue or the item has gone missing, then you're really at a loss because now you have no profit to stand on to help you buffer the loss of this sale. So the cure to this is to make sure that you are remaining competitive and offering customers abandoned cart coupons, or to make sure your pricing is set up competitively to begin with. As always, I wish you all the very best of luck and success in building your Etsy shop for today, tomorrow, and for well into the future. See you later, superstar.